Explore the thoughtless sphere. Embark on a life-changing journey of self-discovery. Embrace harmony with self, with others, with Earth. One world in a new world. Zen Benefiel skillfully ignites conversations, guiding guests to reveal personal journeys and perspectives. Listeners are inspired to seek knowledge and find wisdom in their own lives. Join this transformative journey as we navigate the depth of human experience.
Namaste and in-law cats, and welcome to this week's episode of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel, and as always, please subscribe, like, share, make a comment, do your part, right? Because this doesn't work if you're not participating. We live in a participative world now. So just play your part, right? It's not that difficult to do. And I invite you to visit PlanetaryCitizens.net and pick up your free copy of Planetary Citizens, Awakening the Heart of Humanity. It is a phenomenal book that will ignite your spirit and soothe your soul because it talks about how we are already interconnected, and it gives examples. So it's not theory, it's evidentiary. So I appreciate the tune in, the comments, the subscriptions. We're going into our 5th year here, and this has just been an amazing journey for me, let alone all the guests that we've had. So please do peruse the archives and see what else might resonate and give you the food that you need for today. So this week's guest is Remzi Bajrami. And he and I met through some interesting spins, twists, and twirls as I was doing some research for Planetary Citizens and finding out who else was out there that are organizing things that are in alignment with the mission that we have. And so we began having conversations, and he's joined our board. So I want to bring him on here to share his story too. He is the co-founder of Common Planet Foundation. It's revolutionizing economics with creditism. So he's developing and educating people around the world about creditism and how we can shift from capitalism to creditism and have a much more fundamentally sound economy. He's a graduate of Fairfield University in economics. He's also a graduate of University of Oregon, go Ducks, in journalism and communication. So don't go away. We're going to have a deep, weird dive together in just a moment. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Ramzi, it is so great to have you here. And it's just, Ramzi, you're such a special guy. You're weird like the rest of them. That's a W-Y-R-D, by the way. We were talking about this just pre-show. And, as we're bereft in having these inner conversations with others, the things sharing that vulnerable, often kind of spooky action at a distance side of ourselves that give evidence, the real interconnectedness, because we're afraid to share those kinds of things because we might be rejected, right, out of hand, and we often are. So in regard to that, When did you first recognize that there was more to life than just the physical world and what people thought about and talked about most often?
Ooh, that's a challenging question. I don't know exactly when it happened. Uh, I mean, I can't really pinpoint an exact moment
Sometimes we
where
don't, but was there a general
it happened.
area in your life that, you just had some weird things happen that gave you an insight that maybe there's something else here, and it gave you some credit to your own inner awareness?
You know, it actually didn't happen for me, at least not what you're describing, until kind of later in my life, probably in my 40s. So
Hmm,
more recently, yeah. I mean, I obviously, as a younger person, I did kind of get a sense of our interconnectedness, of there being more than kind of what may be visible or, in tune to our senses.
were
But
you a
it
you
wasn't.
seem like you might have been a curious, mischievous kid.
Oh, there's no doubt I was.
Okay,
I mean, for a lot of us and for a lot of people, and I'm no different, psychedelics was one of the tools in which that helped me to kind of unlock that, to kind of figure
sure.
out, wait a minute, there's
It
something
opens up
more
the doors
here.
to heaven, but you still got to walk through the front door on your own,
To everything.
right?
For
Right.
sure, for sure. But like you mentioned, yeah, I mean, I've always been an inquisitive person. I've always been a kind of, interested in asking questions and seeking answers, and never content with you know with like actually getting there. Like,
Yeah.
obviously we're getting more information, but there's always more questions. There's always more things to learn, and there's always more perspectives, even on the things that we think we've already uncovered
Oh,
and
sure.
understood.
And
Always different
perspective
ways to look at
changes
things.
your perception too, right?
That's the key.
Our perspective is what manages our perception.
Yeah, I very much agree with that.
How did you find that perception or that perspective to shift from when you were younger and this, radically curious, kind of wild, mischievous kid? And I can relate to that because I was too, right? And how did you bring that into a more balanced uh, presentation or a balanced endeavor in life?
It's not been easy, Zen, because most of the interactions and information, books, articles, media that we consume, that are available to us to consume, are traditional, are even wrong. And so, being a seeker, I wasn't content with just consuming those, but you kind of have to, because it's the world in which everyone else is a part of and talking
Sure.
about. And so
Right.
we end up having to know the
You got to
garbage.
know the playing field, right?
Yeah, but in in searching and then finding new books, new materials, new articles, you find new thinkers, you find people who are thinking outside the box, outside the mainstream. And but so the thing though that we already know is that the mainstream, the media empire, doesn't really like to make those voices available.
Oh
And so
no,
they do a good job of shunning them, of keeping them away from us, even from seekers like ourselves. So, unfortunately for them, the internet is kind of like it's a dual-edged tool in a way. Like, it helps them to monitor and control us better, but at the same time, it also allows us to connect with each other more. So for people like us who have the time and who are actually seeking information, we are able to find each other. We're able to
seeking and
finally.
sharing too.
Yes, that's the key. Exactly. It's that dual nature. It's not just us learning, but it's also us, contributing and having the conversation, the dialogue, so that between amongst ourselves, we can actually uncover even more and
Right,
discover
right.
and
Yeah,
go further.
I like a couple of terms here, and I think they're really fitting, right? I describe myself as such. I'm an eduholic and a shareaholic.
Yeah,
And I'm proud of that, right?
I think we're the same.
I'll claim that because it's fun. It's invigorating to be able to do those kinds of things. Now, let's step back a little bit. You mentioned
Mhm.
psychedelics, right? Let's just pause there and dive into the sacred plant world and psychedelics for a little bit. What did you find were key things that you got from your experiences? Were they having to do with the mental constructs you were able to break? Or did you go as deep as to recognizing the frequency that's now present because your mind is not constricted?
So my first experience was when I was 18. I was by myself. It was really the first time I was by myself,
Hmm.
uh, and and it was transformative to me. I didn't know what it was. I had no information about what these
What to
substances
expect,
were.
right?
A friend of mine just gave it to me, so I didn't know what to expect. I really didn't. But going into it, coming out, I came out as a completely different person. During the experience, I asked myself, what is the purpose of life? Uh, and I answered, to help as many people as possible, because it's what I saw my parents doing.
Yeah.
They
It's
came
to
here
love
from
and
a
be
poor,
loved, right?
yeah.
That's the
Well,
action word.
well, the wealth and the capacity and the privileges that they were able to attain by coming to this country, they were able to then share, obviously, through because they loved their family, they loved their
Mhm.
friends, they loved their community, and I saw that, and so I that became, for
Now,
me,
were
that
you
became my
native
driving.
born or did you come with your parents?
I was born in Yugoslavia,
Okay.
and then I came here when I was 5 with my parents. Well, with my
Okay.
mom. My dad had come a few years earlier, and so, you know, but I'm American. I mean, I grew up here.
Right.
Right away, I took to the language, the culture, and the education. Same as everyone else here, and
What
we're
were
very
the
homogenous that
challenges
way.
or the differences that you noticed with the two different cultures? Or were they
It was great for me
people to
because
people?
I was able to see through the bullshit of religion right away because
Hmm.
my family claimed to be Muslim, even though they're not necessarily particularly devout.
Right.
And here is majority of my American friends and who claim to be Christian, of course, and then some of my Jewish friends who claim to be something else. And so I'm like, wait a minute, these are all, they can't all be like they seem to be different, but they're also the same. When you kind of study them, that you find out, wait a minute, a lot of the similarities between these religions are uncanny. But anyway,
They
so
are. They are. Again, it seems to me, and maybe you can validate this, is that the core is to love and be loved, right? To be available, to be serving rather than, usurping, and to just generally have a benevolent nature.
for sure, in a single word, I would say religion at its core is love. Yeah, you
Hmm.
nailed it. But I didn't know that at the time. At the time, I'm thinking these guys are using these narratives, these stories, as more of a tool to control individuals, especially children,
Right.
more than
Right.
any
Right.
other thing. So it seemed like it was a mechanism of control rather than some type of awareness or enlightenment or a seeking. There wasn't that, and so I was able to see through that pretty quickly because
On
of the
the
different cultures.
organizational side, so what did Howard Bloom? He wrote a book called The Lucifer Principle. I had a short conversation with him one day that was just phenomenal. He's one of the most brilliant minds on the planet. I felt and still do. Um, in the book, though, he basically does a scientific study of history and uncovers that a few people manipulated populations by telling them lies over and over and controlling the media stream, right?
Hmm.
Uh, do we have that happening today? So all of these things, and you were just talking about it, right? It gives us the opportunity to step back and be more discerning, right? We were talking
Hmm.
earlier about the challenges of AI and being able to use it morally and ethically clean and human supportive as opposed to what others are afraid of right now and its misuse, which is possible. And however, as human beings, what do you think would be the natural evolutionary process within the development of AI, knowing now that we're so interconnected?
Say that, rephrase that question again.
Fair question, right?
This is a pretty deep question
So
here.
how do you see the challenges of AI being mitigated in order to allow it to emerge in its designed help for humanity?
The same, so I'll take a step back here. With my experience with psychedelics, when I said I wanted to help as many people as possible,
Mhm.
I thought that the answer to that was money is because that's what my parents had used money to be able to help their family. And so I
Sure.
thought that path was going to be to make
Yeah.
as much money
Doesn't
as
buy
possible.
happiness, but it sure does rent it for a while.
Right. So to bring it back to answer your question here, the money game, the incentive structure of that is money at present kind of manipulates our actions and our behaviors to such a degree that we are ruled by its incentives. So you add in tools like AI, which is super powerful
Hmm.
in its form and its structure. Uh, all of a sudden you're accelerating the problems of this game of capitalism that we are already a part of. We already have advanced exponential tools like weaponry that already exists, and now you add to that these agents that are artificial, that are potentially making decisions on behalf of real people. It's a massive problem. We already have concentrated decision making at present,
Right.
but to allow these individuals who have these privileged positions of power, of massive power, where they can command the labor of millions of people and the resources of the planet, and then to be
Mind-boggling, isn't it?
employing, yeah, and then to be employing AI towards the purposes of continuing to, the incentives of this game to benefit and win this zero-sum win-lose game that we're playing, that is
Right.
capitalism. It's a recipe for disaster.
Well,
This
it's
is
a
one of the
collapsed
reasons why.
society, right? It's one, the agenda is profit over people and planet, and that's a society that's eventually going to collapse.
So,
Now, in the flip side of that, the co-creative society that is evolving now. I mean, COVID was a huge wake-up call, right? It got everybody to question themselves. And even if they didn't it initially, right, the sequestration gave them no choice because
oh yeah,
eventually you're going to, that obsession on self-hygiene is going to go inside and you're going to start cleaning yourself up internally. Many did, many didn't because they're still in that fear-based mentality and manipulation and control, like Howard was saying, right? But they're still under the spell. And then there were others who felt the freedom of that and began exploring and seeking, like you mentioned earlier, and finding and sharing, right?
yeah.
And so we're in that process. Now, do you find that these tools are helping to evolve this new normal in a way that it enables folks like you and I who have been doing work in the background for decades to finally have the access and ability to put things together and present them in a little better fashion because we can communicate more easily.
Yeah, they're still new. I'm still beginning to. I'm not an advanced user of AI at all, or I mean, not even barely a beginner user, really, beyond just simple text and editing stuff like that.
Hmm.
I haven't dealt with it, but these tools, though, are like you just mentioned earlier, are part of this meta crisis that we're all understanding. COVID gave people that the time and the capacity to tune in to the problems of the world and
Right.
and this meta crisis. And so AI is just going to accelerate and exacerbate those issues but that capitalism was already kind of churning and producing anyways. And so
Oh,
we're at a point now where we actually have to, as bad as the ecological destruction that is unfolding because of capitalism, because of this incentive game that we're playing, AI is just accelerating the shit out of this, and so we can't live in a concentrated power, concentrated decision-making world. We really need to have a decentralized system where individuals are finally truly free, and their choice making is of their own rather than under the control of
sure.
some other person or institution. And coincidentally, it's actually because of technology we can actually do that. It's because of game theory and trust and computers and record keeping afford that opportunity for us to be able to record our interactions and our, in different ways than we've done in the past, and to trust that we can continue those agreements and those interactions
Right.
into
It
the
brings in
future.
a certain amount of accountability, credibility,
Exactly.
and integrity
Exactly.
because you better be upfront and transparent to begin with, or things are going to unfold and expose,
Right.
right?
So
As
this is
they
why I like
do.
to tell a lot of people that with creditism specifically, it is there's nothing new here. We're just reimagining and rearranging the tools. We're just redistributing currency mathematically correctly, infinitely, rather than this in this debt spiral, constant extraction,
Sure.
production growth cycle that we're stuck in. But none of this was possible prior to technology. It doesn't matter. I don't care how smart humans were in the past. We just simply were never going to be able to overcome the game theoretical and the trust issues that you need in order to have a global coordinated system with 8 billion plus people. It wasn't
Well,
going to
it's
happen without
interesting
computers.
how these discoveries and these technologies emerged
Right.
just prior, during, and after COVID, and the global need for that. When Don Keyes began with Planetary Citizens back in the 70s, he recognized we needed a borderless world, that we
Yeah.
had to interact as planetary citizens together, because doing it separately wasn't solving anything. It was making matters worse. But yet during that time, we were still in the Cold War. There were still all these separative notions, and the threat of nuclear, you know, destruction and all that kind of stuff. And now today, with the technology, with the global reach, with the almost instantaneous traveling of information as events happen, there's much more potential. It's almost like a design, right?
Mm.
Because we've reached this place where we're pending a collapse, right? Now, how do we find our way to navigate through that so that we have the better model, right? Bucky wasn't the first one to say it, Socrates was, right? Bucky gets credit today, but it was Socrates that really said it to begin with. Create the better model, don't fight the system, make
Yeah.
something better, right? And so this is what we're doing. We don't know what it needs to be, but we're smart enough, have the tools and the curiosity from which to draw the better questions to help it emerge. Do you find that true? And what's your experience of that from what you've seen from your side of the table?
There's no doubt. I think that is the overarching narrative and direction of humanity. It has always been to try to figure out how to coordinate with one another, to live together in these kinds of structures. Religions being kind
For the
of
masses, yes. For the few, not so sure.
that's true. That is true. It's a complex question. It's a complex situation we find ourselves in as well, obviously.
Is there a
Uh,
simple answer to, can we start from someplace so simply? I had the notion, this was 35 years ago, I was given the insight that hydrogen's possibly the conduit for consciousness, and I really didn't understand how, right? So I spent decades with the question. And then recently realized that, oh, it's kind of like contact, right? And the blueprints that Ellie was given for the construction of the machine, right? And looking at it two-dimensionally, they couldn't make heads or tails out of it. So there was a primer that put it into a 3D form, which then they were able to decipher and actually build the machines with. So similarly, hydrogen seems to have that tertiary component that the rest of the elements do, but we don't see it yet. So one of the things that I have learned is that if we see an anomaly somehow, it means we don't understand stuff completely. So this kind of leads to that. It's like love, right?
yeah.
Being the core. Well, how is that transmitted? What can we do to elevate and invite and restore that nature that we are?
For me, I think that exploration, that opportunity and ability for us to have the time and the energy and the capacity to think about these deeper connections, the deeper questions of the universe and our place in it. First, we have to take a step back, right? We have to make sure that life is enabled, right?
Right.
And through our economic system, of course, it isn't enabled, and it isn't guaranteed for most people. They live in precarity. They live in day to day, month to month. And so they don't have the time or the place or the space to be able to tune in to ask these deeper questions, which is
Hmm.
I'm not suggesting, by the way, that even these questions have necessarily an answer. That the seeking, the trying to understand this universe a little bit intimately,
Well,
more
it's one of the things
intimately,
that AI allows us to do, right? If we got
it can,
questions and the
but I
resources
think that's
there,
a
because it's an
journey.
aggregated database of all human information.
It
So if you
is,
think
but
of a question, you can do the queries and it'll do the research and come, you got to check the research, right? However, it's wrong occasionally, but it's usually fairly legit. And if you know something that it doesn't, it presents something wrong, you can actually call them out and they'll go back and look and say, oh, yeah, you were right. And so there's this interaction that takes place.
there
It's
is,
not a
but
full trust, there's a reciprocal query that takes place that maybe builds trust over time, right? And just like humans.
yeah. I would say that's like how the expression, the journey, it's not the destination, it's the journey. Here
Yep.
too, it's the act of seeking these, asking these questions, seeking answers, not necessarily getting to an answer to the journey, to the destination, excuse me. It's the journey itself. And I think I would like to have a system whereby all of us could, endeavor on that journey, but we
Sure.
can't at present. Most of us we're too trapped in
What
the
were the questions
insecurity
that
life.
that triggered you to begin looking more deeply? Because you got a finance background, you've
Right.
got multiple other jobs and positions, and which gave you, more understanding of that realm. But as you've mentioned before, it didn't really give you an understanding of money until recently, right?
Right.
So what questions did you have that you found more sense making in the construct of a better distribution system?
It's great. Thank you. So for me, being in finance, I was always, a financial advisor, and trying to help people make as much money as possible, and of course
Hmm.
myself as well. But then what was weird was it wasn't until I had a business failure that I saw the documentary called the Zeitgeist documentary,
That's great,
which
wasn't it?
it was interesting for sure,
Yeah.
but what was fascinating about that for me was that it asked the question of what money is and where it comes from. And what was weird was here I was, devoting my entire life to learning finance and money, and yet I actually didn't know the answer to where money came from, which is ridiculous because it's the central thing that is, it's in all of our
But
lives.
you didn't really know. You're inside manipulating it, right? Who cares where it
Absolutely.
came from? This is because we
Well,
don't
it
think that far.
exists.
We just look at what's right in front of us. We don't necessarily
Yeah.
care where it came from or how it got there.
But it's important, it's critical because if it's the thing that is enabling or not enabling life,
Right.
then it's important to make sure like what is it, where does it come from? How is it distributed? How is it used? What is this tool? Who controls it? And what are its rules? And so and I came
Well,
to
that's
find
that's first world, right? Third world, that don't matter because you're living off the land usually and
well,
not
not anymore.
involved in the system. Yes, it is creeping through. I agree.
So
However,
that's
when
true. So
first when
where I
things
was
first started,
born, in Yugoslavia, it was most certainly that. It was a village. We had
yeah,
land. We had animals. We grew some food. Go to the market. We exchanged things. The majority of our material existence was through that process. But the thing that changes over time, Zen, is that that land and those resources that we had, that were essentially were given because of communism, was taken away and financed. And so then it gets concentrated into fewer and fewer hands. And so you're no longer participating in that. Now your only way in which you can exchange anything in the market is your labor. But the thing is, in those countries, is that they don't build factories, they don't build infrastructure because they don't educate these people. And so now the land is still there. All of the land is there. None of it's being used. Nobody's grazing animals. Nobody's growing anything on the land. Half the people are unemployed, and the rest of them are living on,
Well, it's more
monies
important to mow down the
coming from
Amazon
outside.
to graze cattle. Yeah.
Wherever things are cheaper to produce, that's where they'll be produced. And so if that food is now grown indoors in under, LED lights in Holland and imported, it's cheaper than growing it yourself. And all these reasons, but no, the things have changed. The situation has become more precarious for these people, and finance has found a way to continue and and basically concentrate things even more. That's its
Sure.
nature. That's what it does. So for me, the first question I asked, while I was investigating money of, its sources and its flows and all of that, which really does take a long time because the language isn't easy, the information isn't presented in
Oh,
such a
yeah.
way as that, and there's lots of lies and gaslighting, really
It's like
invented.
trying to read attorney documents or contracts and things like that. Unless you got a law degree, you can't understand squat.
And it's the same thing with accounting.
Yeah,
It's very confusing for a lot of people.
sure.
Fortunately
Well,
for
my
me, I'm pretty
undergrad's
good
in
at math.
finance too, so I get it.
Yeah. So there's a lot of accounting involved, obviously. But the first question I asked myself was, look, because you get this idea that over time, if jobs are going to be the primary method in which people are getting income, what happens if jobs decline? Like if
Or
AI or other
disappear.
technologies,
This is the main fear with AI, right? And
correct?
there's
Yeah.
all kinds of articles out now that, by 2030, there's X number of jobs are going to disappear. So what's going to happen?
Well, the simple to wrong answer is universal basic income. The easiest thing to think of is, well, why don't we just give people money, right? And that would be sufficient, but except that there's a problem. We live in a weird system where the quantity of currency, when it's issued, of course, it debases its value in exchange, the inflation, et cetera. And
Mhm.
so that's a problem. We have a circulatory system. The currency, the quantity just keeps increasing. So UBI becomes then requires redistribution, because if you're going to distribute it and it pools and it doesn't continue to flow correctly, well, then now you've got to take it from some people in order to continue playing the game of redistribution. And that's basically what capitalism is a game of redistribution.
Mhm.
The state spends money, introduces it into the game, it takes money out through taxes. There's, and then of course it's recirculating it. It's making decisions on whom, taking from some people and then giving it to others. And so there is redistribution happening all the time. Anyway, so the first question that I
But is
asked
it
was,
really equitable? That's the
yeah.
question, right?
So the question that I asked, UBI is an obvious, easy design principle. If you can,
Which
just
means,
well, universal basic income. If
okay,
you can flow a specific
that's what I'm,
quantity of money or currency directly to each human, that solves the problem of not having money. That's great. Okay. However, like I mentioned, the redistribution is a problem in capitalism. So the second, feature was, okay, you can distribute money directly to people. That's fine. But what if we can distribute money to people and take away so that labor isn't an expense for somebody, but is instead an opportunity for somebody to collect money. So what I'm suggesting is that we can say that not only can we direct currency to each individual to guarantee and enable life so that they have the currency to exchange for the resources they need to provision themselves to live. We can also incentivize people to contribute to society. Every time they learn, they play, or they work, we can issue more currency
Mhm.
directly because currency is a man-made number. It isn't some limited physical resource that we have to kind of figure out how to
So
distribute.
extrapolating on that would then the opportunity to pay for planetary citizen activity types
Yeah.
of things as opposed to environmental degradation types of things, right? This would seem to facilitate potentially a shift further away from those activities that have been destructive in the past.
Mhm. Absolutely. But it comes down to its distribution. So
Hmm.
in this form that we're distributing the currency, it is, okay, so it's like this. What was the solution to decentralized decision-making power? Democracy was that idea. Democracy is the idea of distributing decision-making. How do you
Right.
do that? Well, you can distribute decision-making through math by distributing what was called a vote. So now you're defining individual decisions through this mathematical numeraire called a vote. Where do votes come from? Society. We issue them. We can issue them in any quantity we want. They can be
Right.
issued and they simply delete when we
Well,
use
we
them.
can do that, but then when you've got the electoral votes, then that, certain numbers and populations go towards supporting one person or
Yep.
one electoral, right? And so that seems to begin with to be able to set up manipulation.
Yes and no, but now keep in mind what you've done here is now you've concentrated decision making to a small subset of people.
Hmm.
You're still giving them just one vote, sure, but you're excluding others from voting.
Right.
If the Congress, the electoral body, if only those few hundred people are voting, you've reconcentrated decision making. You didn't distribute it. And so,
Now, do
how
you
if you
think the
distributed
original
it,
thoughts with the Congress and House of Representatives were based on a very small population that could be managed by the numbers within that, and that maybe
well,
today we need to think of something a bit larger, or maybe even go to decentralized voting and have virtual IDs that are, you know, defensible?
democracy is the correct distributed decision-making protocol. We don't use it enough.
Hmm.
We use that word, but in reality, it isn't democracy, like you're suggesting. The electoral colleges, that's not democracy. Democracy would be us voting. We don't need representatives. Having representatives, choosing representatives to make the voting for us, we've basically said we don't want decision making anymore. We trust
Right.
you're going to make decisions for me. That's not
And
decentralized.
then what
Now, that's
happens?
okay. There's nothing wrong with that, by
Power
the way.
and money take over, right? And that whole inner sanctum of
Right.
manipulation in order to scratch each other's backs and make further money, right, gets in the way, and the whole
Well,
profit over people and planet agenda continues.
we know how to decentralize and distribute decision making through the means of democracy and voting if we wanted to. That can be done, and it has been done.
Well, we do
So,
it through international,
sort of,
corporations now that have shared
sort of.
systems, and they show how these integrated systems can work globally.
Mhm.
It's just for their specific purpose.
So what we've done here with creditism is taken that notion of democracy, decentralized decision making, and
Mhm.
applied it to economics by distributing the currency equitably to each person without, conditions. Means that we've distributed control over the resources of the world instead of fighting over the resources of these ownership positions of who's going to own the oil and collect the tribute, the free money that's
Do
generated.
we really own anything? I mean, we come and go on this planet. To really think we own anything is kind of ridiculous.
It,
But yet we
absolutely.
do, right? This is another belief system that's been in place for millennia that, is it real?
That's,
No, it's imagined. It's a human construct. And right now, maybe it's headed towards entropy.
but
Uh,
we've built our economic system based on that idea of ownership, of fighting. Someone must own the oil, but why? So we've never questioned those assumptions. And the
right.
reason being, it come back down to the game theory is because these are things that are power dynamics that are embedded in our historical relationships of having to provision ourselves for life because
Mhm.
I need, to capture my local resources, my trees or whatever. It has the aura, the sense of it being mine, even though technically speaking, of course, it's the commons, it's nobody's. We are basically claiming it. We're
Right.
taking it, but we didn't pay anyone for it. How
Well, we
come we don't
become
have to pay
hoarders
anyone
instead
for
of
it?
stewards, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, how come this, for example, the Saudi Arabians are take the oil? Why is it their oil? Why is it not our oil? Like, who did they buy it from? Nobody, obviously. It's just pure banditry, and it's not just with oil. It's with every commodity, every resource.
Yeah.
Fish. animals,
How
trees.
how would you see, your arguments sound, how do you see the segue between the two? How would you see the introduction to this new system or the
So
potential of it?
yeah, that's a great question. I appreciate that. The simplest answer I'll say is that we create the new currency, and digitally, we create a digital network where we incentivize people to join, and we allocate the future currency to these people, but it's not real. We don't have that power to say, hey, this money is real right now. However, we can say that this money could be real, but you need to put some political pressure on your
Well, it
country
sounds
and
almost like a
change
pie
the
in the sky
rules.
thing. We're going to give you this valueless
But it's
token
not.
now. We're going to bribe you to come play with us and give you something that we think is going to have value. We don't
Yeah,
know yet, but
we
will you
can't.
come play with us because we're giving you this to come play in our system with?
Yeah, but
Now, in a way, that kind of makes sense, right? I mean,
the
it's
only way we can do it. I mean, it's like the Declaration of Independence. It's like the American Revolution. They made a
right,
declaration. They said, this is what we're doing, and they did it. And we're doing the same thing. We're going to make a declaration. We're going to create the application. We're going to create the network. The people, our group is going to, say, this is what we believe in. This is what we're going to anchor
hmm
towards. And that future currency, even we have the right to, to create and allocate it, but we don't have the power to make it real yet.
right.
But then at the national
Well,
level,
we
we
can
do.
certainly test it. I mean, you and I have talked about this with the potential of planetary citizens and how
Correct.
it may be a good testing ground for this because
There's that transition opportunity where we could use the currency in the interim while we're transitioning, before we can ever get any country to adopt these creditism rules in their country to play a better currency game.
sure, we got to show it
It's
works.
possible. Yeah, it's possible. We could, through the network, as individuals, utilize either a token that we can create that is real
hmm
during the transition, and maybe even the future currency as well, because no one can stop us. Just like with local exchange trading systems, where people will create local currencies and they'll exchange those with one another, no
Right.
one stops them. So here too, we can create a global local exchange currency if we wanted to. I'm not sure the
Well,
exact design
it
space
kind of
yet.
makes
Possible.
sense with the number of alliance organizations that we've been able to find so far and display on Planetary Citizens as we communicate and develop relationships with each one of those, it would seem to make sense that in this playground of global emergence of coherent or coherence, right? Because this is kind of what it's all built around is regenerative cultures and paying attention to each other as well as the planet and doing things that are healthy as opposed to destructive. Well, all of these organizations have that same alignment in their own specific way. Well, it would seem that in all of these resource pools, human and otherwise, right, that there are technologies, there's understanding, there's applications and tools that are cross-pollinationable and
Mhm.
shareable, if you will, that elevates everybody, right? Because when you raise the tide, it raises all ships, not, unless you got a short anchor. Um, and there are those too, I'm sure. How would you see something like that evolving, and does that fit with the image and ideas that you have for the development and expression the of your foundation and through the creditism?
Yeah, so from our perspective, I can just describe, our what we're doing, the network.
Yes,
We're going
please
to be,
do.
yeah, we're going to be launching what we call the IU network. IU means life in Sanskrit. And so the idea here is that we can create, now we're allowed to create a digital token, and we can
Mhm.
distribute it for free. to members. So when members join, we can, under a universal income program, we can say, hey, you join the network and you're going to get this token, this many. If you refer people, you get more. And every month, the earlier you join, the more per month you might get, right? So we can incentivize people to join the network earlier. And they'll get a universal amount every month. It'll be small, of course, because we don't want to destroy the value of the token. Now, as we're doing all these, token issuances, right? It is possible that through the global network, we can use that token. It'll have a small nominal value in the market. Of course, we can't control that. It's all speculative, whatever the community wants. It'll be small, but over time, as we're issuing more tokens, as more people are joining the network, the total value of the token could be sizable. And so what's happening is we're extracting existing value from the world to be able to flow it to our projects, to our members and end partners who are essentially working on the transitionary pieces. And so now that token is possible to use towards these, towards whatever interactions and exchanges that we can kind of imagine within the existing paradigm of capitalism. However, the future token itself, the way we imagine it, it can be allocated. We can say, hey, here's your future token in your account. It's not real right now. In order for it to become real, you actually have to get your country to change the rules on currency and property in order to play this flow system, because at present we have a system that's confusing, or at least creating the currency as an exchangeable circulating asset which stays forever. And it's not a pure currency. It's not like a vote, right? Votes are not dependent upon, they don't flow from me to you, right? They're issued to you, used, and they delete. And so in order to introduce a new voting token that has those features, means it can't also, flow from me to you. And so in order to do that, you really need to change the national laws, unfortunately. And so, but that's actually good and bad. It's good because we know that we can do it. There exists already legal precedents for a group of people to come together and say, this is what we agree on, and this is what we're going to do. And so people can already create their own currencies. They already do.
Well, they can create their own countries.
That's what I'm saying. So that's essentially what's happening here. So any group of people, these are fluid, right? Borders are even fluid, as we're finding out right now. America's wanting to attack everybody. So that's the structure. The incentives are the existing tokenization that is out there in the world. And the nice thing about that is that it costs us nothing. There's precedence for this. There's multiple projects out there now that distribute tokens under either universal basic income programs or even various activities like planting trees or cleaning, waste and stuff like that. Cleanups.
Well, there's even one that gives you tokens for achieving the flow state more often.
There's that for using social media less. There's all kinds of projects out there. So the precedence is there for us. The opportunity is there for us. Tokenization is a path, but at the same time, there is the element of speculation, right? Creditism.
Well, sure. And even speculating, right? There's this need for looking ahead. Consider, okay, we're one planet, one Earth, one people, one destiny, maybe, right? And that's thrivability, right? That's what we really are wanting to achieve, so that everybody has the chance to thrive, not just survive.
Humanity,
So
especially.
it would make sense, looking at the progress of a planetary civilization. I mean, we can see the progress, if you look back over millennia, we can see how it's progressed to now. And now what about the future? Okay, can we make an Evo leap into understanding a global system that everybody is part of and benefits from?
That's kind of what we need to, what we can map through the
Well,
application
to
as well.
see
We have
that
this.
and yet to achieve it, that's two different things, right? That's what you and I and others like us are saying, okay, how do our pieces fit so that we can create this holistic system that works for everybody?
Yeah. Well, we have to use the tools available to us. We have to connect people. We need to build a truthful architecture. We need to have a digital world where we are individuals, where we're empowered, where we know we don't have to worry about anymore about
Yeah, are
how
you
we're going
real,
to.
or am I just seeing a digital image of you, talking to me like a human being?
Right. That's another element. That's also where we're approaching the notion of, because of this game that we're playing, there lies the opportunity for us to manipulate each other, right? But
Okay.
in the next version, if we're going to have a coordinating system of 8 billion humans, we need to be operating on a truthful architecture,
Sure. Now,
a
this goes back to this.
central sense-making apparatus of sorts that
Absolutely.
isn't
Now,
built on
is that
bullshit.
something exterior or something interior?
Maybe both. I don't know. What do you think?
I- It would seem that, as I spoke earlier about hydrogen being the conduit of consciousness, right? There's a certain, physics is even revealing, there's a certain vibe to particular frequencies that are either true or not. We can discern that. We have the sensory capacity within our bodies to do so. They're designed. I mean, the indigenous wisdom, you've probably heard about this before. Three brains, right? The gut, the heart, and the head. The gut
Mm,
senses everything. Intuition, gut feeling. Why is it called that? Because it naturally senses the vibrations around you. It lets you know. Then you process it. The discernment happens in the heart. Is this, desirable or undesirable? And there's a wide gamut in that too. And then you feed it to the quantum computer sitting on top of your shoulders that is multidimensional, and it processes better information to give you more clear, coherent choices.
mhm.
Now, how
But
do we
important. Mm.
educate people that that system exists within each of us?
That's a complex topic there, and I'm not sure of that path. But before we even get there, though,
I'm not
Zen,
either, but I'm curious. That's,
before we even get there, though,
you
then
figure you
we
got
have
to
to
at some point, right?
first we have to be operating on in a truthful physical paradigm. I mean, like, so if that person who's trying to make sense of all the conditions in the physical world that you just described, but if we put them into some type of a VR virtual reality where they didn't know they were in virtual reality, right?
Right.
And now they're operating like this is the truth, this is what's real.
Now we're
That's
talking
dangerous.
Matrix, right?
Well, no, not necessarily. So what I'm suggesting is that our information architecture, the way in which we, share information about what's possible, the resources that exist, the
Mhm.
technologies that exist, the patents, and all these other things that are real in the world, but if we keep them secret from each other or we lie to each other, and worse, now we present a completely different reality, which isn't reality. Well, their discernment and their sense making and choice making are going to be based
Oh, yeah.
on false
Well, and we're
premises.
seeing, if I can go out, I'm going to get a little weird here.
Mm,
Um, there's evidence from various folks that have communications with people from elsewhere. I'll put it that way. Very real. Now, we even know the military is saying, yep, they're here, they're visiting. We don't know much about them, they think. So, anyway, they're saying that we're just a bunch of alpha males managing pyramids, competing with each other and warring over resources. Well, if we're seen that way from a distant view, right, we're not real because we're so entrenched in this mechanization, we don't see that completely. Now, there are those who we've got the time to step back and, whether it's age, income, jobless, unemployed, seeking, and even the employed and seeking, there's still, it doesn't matter where you're at. There's this nature of wanting to be more whole, of being able to love and be loved as we're designed to be. And I think that's really what's fueling this next evolutionary leap in humanity. It's even
yeah.
been proven. There's a gal in Russia, a Russian academician who got her, which is the highest um, science honor title in Russia. Her dissertation was on the global mutation of DNA in humanity that she's been able to track over the last 10 years and the evolution of consciousness that's coinciding with it.
So everything you're saying is scaring the hell out of me right now. But which makes it even more important for us to be able to have a core, shared, open, truthful architecture for future sense making. Because at present, this zero sum winner take all game that we're playing, utilizing these new tools to change the reality, or at least to project alternate realities, to command and control people towards your own motivations and incentives, I think are fucked. And so we have to transition. Like, this is why
We're
we
being
need
forced,
criticism.
right?
This is
Whether
why
we want to or not, it is happening. We're
well,
having to look at
no,
this
but
and
okay,
make
so
choices.
if I can step back a second here, Zen, um, there's this book I found early on in my journey. It is
Mhm.
called This Will Change Everything. And they asked a whole bunch of different thinkers, like, what would change everything? And the actor Alan Alda answered, I don't think anything will change everything, except for maybe if we figured out how to live with one another. And here's the thing, we're not. So how
Bingo.
everything that we're talking about is futile until we learn to live with one another. As long as we're operating under a game where if I don't kill you, you'll kill me. Well, we're
That's
gonna
why that's
lose.
why we're not being visited openly because there's no order.
I don't.
Everything is
Okay, so here's
chaotic.
what
There's
I don't know if I
no
agree with that. Here's the thing.
unified. Well,
Like
this is
we,
where, I'm,
well,
and I can
because no,
validate
no.
this, not just for myself, but from others, that, until we learn to work together, we're not going to have access to our universe family,
But
which
the
are
question,
waiting for us to get our shit together so that they can help.
okay,
But
well,
they
hold
can't
on.
do it until we do.
But no, no. See, here's where I disagree. I think. Um,
Well, it doesn't
what?
mean they can't give information
Why can't
and
they tell
help
us? Yeah,
that
why can't
way,
they
but
tell us
as
how to
far
do
as
it?
direct intervention or sharing tools, for instance.
No, no tools necessary, just information. I believe what creditism is, what I'm talking about is just information, it's just coordination. We're just re-changing the incentives that money represents. That's all
Mhm.
we're doing. It's mathematically redistributing currency differently, which changes the relationship of our access and controls to the resources, which changes the entire game. Now,
And
towards
changes the
coordination.
entire mentality
Right. Ultimately, yes.
involved with that,
So if
right?
those aliens knew how to live with one another, like Alan Alda is suggesting,
Well,
then they
they
could have told
do.
us that they don't, because if they do, they would tell us, and then we would do it,
Remzi, I'm telling you, whether
right?
you believe it or not, or had direct experience of it, I have. And this is what they're saying. And it's not just through me, it's through many others, right? They've learned how. They can travel through space and time because they've developed the discipline to be in that love frequency without fail. You can't do it any other way.
So you're saying we have to do it ourselves, more or less.
Exactly. It
It
is
would be easier. It'd
self-initiated.
be easier if
Everything
we just
always is.
if they
It's
just helped
not
us. But
something
yeah,
that
I
we're
see what you're saying.
forced to do. It's something we're invited. All the spiritual Christian or spiritual ancient texts, right? Christian, Muslim, Zoroastrian, all of them all say you're invited. You have to make the choice.
Maybe they are. So I think I told you that when I uh, understood what creditism meant, that I
Hmm.
actually cried and was really scared because it felt to me like somebody had put this information in my brain. Like I didn't just like it was out there. It was somewhere in the
Right.
universe. And
Well, it was
because all
out
of a
there
sudden, because
because
I
you were
turned my
curious. You found it because you were curious
yeah,
enough.
I tuned into it, and because I accidentally tuned into it, I received the information. And so
Mhm.
maybe they did share the information, and now it's embedded in us, but it's up to
Well, think about
us.
it this way. Forget the aliens. Let's look at
Yeah.
it from a multidimensional quantum state reality, especially
Oh
with
boy.
quantum computers, right? It's multidimensional, right? Which means there's layers of frequency and there's information on each one of those layers. And depending on the questions you ask and the frequency of which you ask them, the intent, the level of importance of them, and so on and so forth, right? That information, that infinite information that's specific to you is available, but you got to ask the right questions in order for the
Mm,
download to happen.
yeah. Yeah, you're describing that process that
It's
I
the
feel
same
happened to
for
me.
all of us.
Yeah,
There's infinite intelligence available specific to us, not to anybody else, right? It's also available to everybody else.
yeah.
However, you're not going to get my information, right? I have the certain queries and constructs and things that I want to know, right? Or the
Are
destiny that I want to fulfill,
are
possibly.
we seeking these both unconsciously and consciously, or more unconsciously?
I believe in the past it was more unconscious because, again, we're bereft of having those inner and outer conversations and bridging the worlds for fear of being killed, right?
Mm,
Look throughout history of how many people were done that way, right? They had different gifts that were somehow tuned into something greater that were seen as demonic or all that kind of stuff, which is simply not true,
which is, yeah,
right? They're just more advanced.
even knowing
Now,
stuff. Yeah,
because we have a whole generation of kids that are more advanced than us, than my generation now, right? They're pushing the bar up.
mm.
And
But
we're
they're more
having to
advanced in
look at,
access to
well,
information. Yeah,
how does this work? And it is all information. It's what we choose to do with it that matters.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is why I've been studying, and interested in in kind of motivations and what power, how do we affect, how do we get people to believe certain things? But it's just not, it's not
I don't
intuitive.
think you
It's not
do.
something I
I
want
think
to
what it
do.
boils down to, and maybe how do you, rather than me being preemptive, how would you think that would take place?
Well, for me, it was learning about, what power is. Like, what are these tools that shape people? And one of the books that I found was definitive and really good for me was Power by Galbraith in 1983, I think. And in it, or maybe late 70s, he talks about three types of power. And obviously, force being he called it with C's. I think he called it condign, which was like force,
Hmm.
compensatory, money, right, incentives. And then the third one was conditional, which was basically information, and so uh,
Which is how
popularity,
we've been treating love to date.
yeah,
I'll
conditional.
love you as long as you're this way,
Oh, yeah,
right?
that's in a combination. That's also incentive transaction. Anyway, so those three forms of power are kind of ironically at present combined in a way in money itself. In that tool of money, money is an incentive, right? It's also force because money is what we pay the army, which is the incentive, and then they're the force, and then also the money is also used to purchase the media, the all of the online tools nowadays, newspapers, televisions, etc. And so they've captured all the powers through this tool of money, and so by taking that tool, reimagining it, so that's not a tool of power, but it's rather just an incentive game for all humans. All of a sudden, means that the traditional concentrated tools of power, the force, has been minimized, neutralized, because when you can't tell somebody else to go kill somebody, but they have to do it on their own, they're not going to want to do that probably. Uh,
Duh.
so
That just
now,
totally makes sense because that's not natural.
right. So now we've decentralized those power dynamics. And this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a concentrated power universe that's concentrated them all through this system of money. And it's a game. It's a game of rules that is embedded at the international level, really, because the game of money and credit creation is international. The Bank of International Settlements in Switzerland, they're the ones who make these rules. And other countries agree to play by them. They agree to have a central bank operating under these credit conditions, and they will, take care of the accounting and create the currency for you under their rules, and you can just, do your thing. That's what we're operating in our present. So this is what gives me tremendous hope, though, Zen, is because those powers are embedded through law. Law is just an agreement that humans.
And there's a lot of questions about that right now. It's like everything, and this is what Jose Arguelles was saying about the Mayan calendar and the whole transition between the Piscean and the Aquarian ages. Everything that doesn't fit this new normal model of being congruent and coherent is going to rise to the surface for examination and reformation,
Yeah.
or elimination, depending, right? Now, seeing things as you do, having developed what you have, and being a long way into actually developing the app, from what I understand, there's what's your vision of the near future and approximately what you think it might take time-wise for
Mm.
the adoption of this or a new system, regardless of whether, you know, this is it or not. I have a feeling that there's several models like yours that are going to end up being
Mhm.
hybridized, right?
Yeah.
Because
The
that's the
details
nature of
are,
things, right?
yep, absolutely. It's just like any other game. Once you got the main structure, you're always going to be tinkering with the fine tuning the pieces, some of the individual rules. It's no different with creditism, for sure.
Right.
Those, like the quantities, the actual universal flow, and the other monies, those numbers might change, but the structure, meaning distributing currency to each individual because they're human, it is a design, mathematical design that I'm certain is the correct evolution. Now, how long is it going to take us to do this? That's a damn good question. It's going to depend, mostly, Zen, on
What's an
our.
educated guess? Because you've done more than most in looking at the systems, how
I
they
would
were
say
made, what
it's going
they're.
to take hopefully less, but I think it's going to probably take between, if I'm going to be real, it's going to take between 5 to 10 years until any country adopts these principles. It
Mhm.
could happen quicker. That's the interesting thing about this structure, is that something like this could happen instantly. Think of the European Union.
Well,
How
think
that
of any
happened
product
really
curve,
quickly,
right? It's,
huh?
you've got that in the product curve. You've got the slow rise where, nobody knows you, then you start to get popularity and
Correct.
people start finding out, and then you go up,
It'll
and
take a
pretty
minimum
soon
of
you're the
two to
best
three
thing since
years
sliced bread.
It'll take a minimum of 2 to 3 years till we have, if we're successful, till we have millions of people who are using the application. Now, what's interesting is that the digital tools for decentralization, for governance, for voting, for record keeping, for
They're already
property, all
available.
of that, exactly, they've already
Yeah.
exist. And so by attracting this network through the tokenization, means that we'll be able to map out and play with those digital tools faster, which means that they will be then adoptable and implementable at any national level. So any country that wants to transition, instead of continuing this redistribution schemes that countries do now,
Mhm.
like, well, think of America, all of the social programs, it's all redistribution schemes, right?
Sure.
If you
Have you
distribute
got
the
an
currency
idea what your
correctly to
sampling
begin with,
numbers might be in order to test it?
I really don't know. From our next steps, of course, is launching the network. But
Hmm.
immediately after that, the only work remaining, real work remaining in terms of creditism, is just the modeling and simulation of the numbers for optimal initial allocations, not to determine whether or not the game is viable and playable and infinite. No, we already know that that is certain. It's mathematically pure and possible to play the game and for it to continue to remain uncapturable and distributed. That's guaranteed. That's math. That's really
Hmm.
simple basic math. um but the rest of it, is we don't know the political side of what it's going to take. But that's the thing too. The challenge here is that we have AI. We've got these powerful people and players in at present, and who aren't going to want what we're doing because they like concentrated power. They
Well,
like their
sure.
privileges and their wealth. They don't
Unless,
want to share.
unless there's something in it for them.
Well, There is, by the way, of course there is, but not necessarily for everyone. Here's the thing, like
Right.
how there's not for a psychopath who doesn't care about anyone or humanity, well, then there isn't something in it for them.
Well, it'd be kind of a self-vetting system then, wouldn't it?
Well, it would be, but the problem is that at present is precisely those people, a lot of those people who do have power, the
Right.
psychopaths. They do have too much right
Right.
now, and they're not interested in humanity. They don't give a shit about other people or or life even, which is really sickening to me. But nevertheless,
Right now,
um,
I find it best not to judge or condemn or just, like you said, step back, watch, observe,
small group.
do what's in front of you to do. And speaking of that, what's in front of you in the near future, and what's it look like for you in being able to move your playing piece forward?
Well, this is it's a difficult time for me because of the amount of time and resources that I've already invested into this project means that I'm basically running on fumes. And
Sure.
so
Well, it's a
the
labor of love. That's the way it is for
it
most
really
of
is.
us, right? We're
So
so
for
compelled to do it that it doesn't
yeah.
matter.
For me, all I can do is move forward. Is
Mhm.
we're going to launch the podcast, begin the conversations. I've got a pretty good network of people, that we can do that with. I've got a good producer. The only thing that, the only thing I'm really lacking at the moment, which will be working on solving, is taking care of, that rat race, the treadmill
And
of
getting a
making sure
steady
that
cam.
yeah, but making sure that I can,
Yeah.
I can
Right.
live, that I have some form
It
of
looks like you're on
income.
your laptop because every time you hit your desk, your camera
I
moves.
am, yeah, I definitely have to
Um, Definitely kept the
adjust.
conversation lively, kind of bouncy.
Sorry about that.
Right?
Anyway,
Oh, I'm just
no,
having fun with it.
no. So for me, that's going to be the challenge. The challenge is basically, keeping myself alive doing this work while being able to do it, full time. If I go back to, my regular job, well, then I can't do this, because it really is draining, taking all of life's energy on focusing on doing the other
Sure.
bullcrap stuff.
Well, again, there's
Um,
balance, right? Where can you apply yourself to where you can find that ability to manage and be balanced? And, sometimes in the segue, we've got to revert to the old ways as we're transitioning to the new ones, and not to judge ourselves for that too, because it seems to me anyway, that in this apparent rise of consciousness or raising, it's like an upwising of our heart drives, right? Where we're learning self-love and that we're failing forward instead of just, thinking that we're failing. We're always learning something. We're always moving the needle. And just to see that, to
mhm.
recognize that it may be slow, it may be incremental, it may be excruciatingly fun, and yet we're still doing it. What would you say is, the having been where you have, doing what you're doing, what's the best advice you can give to someone who is of similar ilk and maybe has their own idea that they're wanting to move forward with?
I would say, and this is also advice to myself, is be more open. Tell people, share your ideas, share your thoughts. Don't be scared of their opinions. But these conversations are difficult sometimes when, coming forward and telling people that you have solutions that they may not have or that they don't see can sometimes be jarring and can sometimes, rub people the wrong way. Don't be afraid to do it. If it's important if you see it, then I think it's important for you to get or at least help other people try to see it too. And so that's where I'm at in my stage right now. I've learned that what the information that I have, the knowledge that I have, it needs to be shared in order for more people to tune in and also advance their own ideas and thinking. It needs to be brought out into the open. And so don't be afraid, basically. That's what I would say.
Don't be scared, you know.
More or less,
And,
get
and
out
the more
there.
you
Like
aren't,
just
the
just
more
do
you
it.
do that, the more respect and reflections you'll get, and you'll grow your own knowledge base and maybe even get some insights as to, what to do next too.
For me, most of the conversations have been in secret, have been in the background, have been in private. So I have been reaching out, but it's been specific. It's been,
Sure.
and like you're suggesting, oh yeah, there's always questions and challenges to the ideas and to the protocol that were actually input taken in, and we
Mhm.
use their ideas and their suggestions and their challenges to improve creditism and the design space. And so it was instrumental in us having conversations with other people because we couldn't figure it out all by ourselves.
Sure.
And so it has been a team effort, if you will, a sharing, a collective sense making of understanding and uncovering what
Co-creation,
this is.
right?
Yeah, even everything, all of it, even the name, finally came to me, and people still are not necessarily happy with the name. I'm open to
Well, yeah, like
suggestions,
a mutual friend
alternatives.
of ours says, any ism creates a schism, right?
Right. Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's
So
possible.
yeah,
Anything's
but it needs a
possible. You
name.
just have to learn how to work with it, right?
Yeah,
So, speaking of working with it, we've worked ourselves out of time. Um,
almost.
this has been an amazing conversation, and I really honor the tenacity that you've had in following that inner prompting that you got to dive deeper into the work that you're doing and evolve it into something beneficial and worthwhile for the world.
Thank you.
I think that's admirable. Um,
Appreciate
and
that.
I know the trials and tribulations of doing that. Trust me.
I know. I believe you. And we're not alone. There's lots of us who are we were sacrificing our own time in our lives, and in some cases our immediate family. But that's only because we see the greater humanity and life as a whole as
Mhm.
our ultimate, family. And so the sacrifices that we're making for that is really what gives me joy, and
Sure.
that's the return. That's why I'm doing this. So in a way, that may sound selfish, but there's nothing selfish about
No,
sacrificing for the greater
no.
good.
Well, it brings up the law of one, right? A lot of people know about that. It's based in two potential pendulum swings, right? Service to self or service to others.
Mm,
And it's love and fear based. Well, I would say, love's not necessarily the correct term there. I think it's more trust. Because what happens when you truly love unconditionally? You trust implicitly, right? So I say that to say this, the ultimate service to self is service to others because it's reciprocal. That way, it's like a Mobius operandi, right?
yeah.
Where you're all there it together working on the same thing. So I appreciate the work that you do, and thank you for it and being part of Planetary Citizens too.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for our union. I'm excited to, be working together. Our missions and our approaches are on the same path.
Mhm.
And I think we're going to be successful. If not us, I mean, we as in humanity will succeed, and we will find the freedom and one love that we've been anchoring or aiming for, I think, in all of our existence. And we'll get there. Maybe
Yeah.
you and I won't see it, but I think we'll get there.
Chance we might.
We will. We have to. We have no other
Right.
choice.
Remzi, appreciate you, man. I love you
Thank
and
you.
what you're doing. And thank you for being with us this week. And
Thanks.
namaste and in la catch. And thank you for sticking with us for this episode of One World in a New World. And I know you've got a lot of new information that you're going to be processing. Reach out to Remzi. His links will be available underneath the description of the video. So, and I'm sure he'd love to answer those and connect you with whatever information you need for that. And by all means, don't forget to stop by planetarycitizens.net, download your free copy. And I mean free. There's no strings attached. There's no form. There's no list. You just click and the download comes up and it'll be on your computer in a moment's time. So thank you for that in advance and for your subscription, your comments, and your concern for being a planetary citizen today. We'll see you next time. All right.
Zen, thank you. That was great. I really enjoyed that conversation.